Okej, nu går vi.
We are talking WITHER from 2012, also known as VITTRA. And this is effectively the Swedish equivalent of Evil Dead. Of course, we had the Evil Dead remake in 2013, but this is a surprisingly similar movie and is almost like, I would say, an unofficial remake, so to speak, of Evil Dead. And we've said many times on this channel that films are like another film, and some of them are very much like Evil Dead. This one really is like Evil Dead. Now, the story, very much like that original Sam Raimi classic, takes place in the woods, in a cabin, and we have a group of young people going there for a kind of excursion, and they awaken some type of entity, force, paranormal kind of like creature that's living in this kind of basement, in this kind of rundown cabin in the woods, so to speak. And inevitably, part of this group gets infected and then affects other people, soon turning them into kind of flesh-eating kind of creatures that spread like a virus through kind of blood or bites and scratches and things like this. So what will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let us discuss. Now, this was a deliberate homage to the Evil Dead, and I think in some ways it's more like the original Evil Dead than the actual 2013 remake, I would suggest. It tries to have that kind of slightly off-kilter feel, like the original movie did. And I think the 2013 remake, the official remake, played it more of a straight horror film and was much more about the gore. Whilst I feel this one does try to somewhat kind of capture that feeling, that kind of low budgetness, that kind of inventiveness of the original movie. So in some ways it's a little bit more like the Evil Dead originally than the actual official remake. And that's one of the things I would say that in its plus column. I would suggest that if you are a fan of that original movie, and I thought the remake was fine, although I wasn't a huge, massive fan of it. I thought it actually lacked that little kind of like something that made the Evil Dead movie so special. But it was fine as a horror movie. This one, I think, gets closer to it. But it does have a few problems, which we'll come on to. What can we say that works other than that in this movie's favour? This movie does have a somewhat of a brutal feel. So I would say it does actually combine the 2013 remake of the Evil Dead, that kind of brutal gore and more kind of modern kind of aesthetic, so to speak, with that kind of like more grindhouse feel of the original. And they've even got kind of like grain and kind of things like that on the movie to give it like an old kind of feel. This being a Swedish movie as well, I should point out it is in subtitles, and so I'll get a dubbed version, I guess. But you know, I think the acting is fine for this kind of movie. It's always a little bit difficult to judge non-English speaking roles, as you can never kind of quite 100% tell what you're reading on screen is a true translation of what's being said and things like that. But I thought they did a good job here. There's some interesting kind of gore effects that are all kind of done practically. There's a lot of gore here. It's mostly kind of decapitations or limbs getting chopped up with a lot of blood. I wouldn't say we see anything like super loads of offal or things like that. So it's lots of blood, but nothing I would suggest that you haven't really kind of seen before in some ways. But nonetheless, it's done effectively, and there's plenty of it. And I think once we get started, I mean, it's only a matter of time before our dwindling kind of group of survivors gets less and less, and you have that sort of ticking time bomb where you know people are going to get infected. One thing I thought was interesting in this movie, and I didn't think they did enough with it, if I'm honest, but they kind of introduced an element of paranoia, where you know, our kind of group of protagonists maybe think someone is infected, and are they or are they not? There's a sequence where, I won't give you too many specifics, where we have a couple of characters talking, and you generally start going in like the eyes, and you know, a character seems to have something in their eye that's like, are they infected or aren't they? And I think that's an interesting wrinkle that isn't in the Evil Dead movie, really. And I thought that would have been a kind of a little bit of a point of difference, and something they could have expanded on. You can always bring in like the, you know, elements of the Thing in that case, but it's kind of touched upon, but not quite as much as done with it. I think that could have been. But overall, you know, if you like the kind of the Evil Dead movies, there's quite a lot of kind of like running around a house. We do get some kind of quite good decisions made by characters. They like immediately kind of phone the police. We get a couple of characters immediately kind of try and kind of leave. So, you know, it's not one of these films where you think, oh God, why are people making these dumb decisions? We do get an attempt at making kind of the right decisions. They immediately try and kind of call for help and things like this. You know, so yeah, arguably you could say there's some kind of like better decisions made in this movie than your kind of garden variety kind of horror film. But what doesn't work? Now, despite this movie, I would suggest feeling a little bit more like Sam Raimi's original than the 2013 movie, I don't think it gets quite all the way there. This is going to be hard to describe, but some of the direction I just felt was a little flat. I was watching this movie and I was just thinking, you know, there's a scene, for example, where one of our possessed characters kind of bursts through a window and sort of attacks one of the uninfected. I just thought it's just filmed in a way that's quite flat. There's more drama that could have been done here, more done with kind of like the angles, the music, the lighting. It just seems because they just kind of put the camera and just kind of let it happen. And it just feels like it could have been filmed in a way that I think could have been a little bit more sort of punchy, a little bit more sort of stylistic. And that it's not quite as Sam Raimi's classic in regards to that. It just feels the direction here is fine, but it's not outstanding in any way. It's just kind of like more kind of point the camera and shoot to a certain degree. So it ends up being somewhat toothless to a weird degree. I mean, there's plenty of gore here. There's plenty of violence. It's just lacking a little bit of kind of like the heightened drama that I feel you know, like a more of a visionary director would bring to it, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's just filmed in a little bit of a flat way, and I think sometimes you even feel you have these kind of little down points, these little kind of lulls in the kind of the film, and it just, I wouldn't say it's boring really, but it's just kind of, it ebbs, the pacing of this movie kind of ebbs and flows. It's relatively minor critique that, because I think overall it's relatively kind of well put together, but it just lacks a little bit of genre vivre, if that makes sense, that the kind of the original movie really kind of had. The original kind of Evil Dead movie, it just kind of lacks that little bit of kind of extra special sauce. And arguably you could say this movie is lacking in originality. Like I've said, there are elements here where I felt it could have added a little extra, the element of paranoia. It's introduced, but then really nothing is done with it. It's a little bit too close to the Evil Dead in some respects to really have much of its own identity. And despite there being a couple of instances where we see characters making sort of good decisions, equally there are characters who make, and in situations where you're thinking, why would you be doing this? The character that decides he's going to go off as soon as the kind of like the, you know, it all starts going sideways, like we get a couple of characters, right, we're leaving. And instead of going straight to the car, they for some reason decide to check out like the shed. And why would you do that? There's no reason why you would go there. It's just to push the story along. And again, there's a couple of instances where you're thinking, why would someone do that? So there's a little bit of a mix in regards to the kind of like the writing for being, it's, you know, relatively kind of realistic of what people might do, to kind of like not so much. But overall, I feel if you are a fan of the Evil Dead and you haven't seen WITHER, you would probably enjoy it. It's actually a pretty good film. I was kind of quite invested. And you know, I'm a big fan of the Evil Dead series. Probably both original two films are going to be in my top 10, and this is a very kind of like, you know, good approximation of those original films. And I'd probably go so far to say, given the choice, I'd probably watch this over the 2013 remake, if I'm honest. So there you go. I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of Wither? Please do let me know, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.